Strategic budgeting is a critical tool for organizations and governments, aiming to achieve long-term objectives efficiently and effectively. Unlike traditional budgeting methods, strategic budgeting aligns financial resources with an organization's strategic goals, ensuring that every amount spent contributes to the broader vision. In this video, we'll discuss strategic budgeting as a tool for organizations and governments to achieve their long-term objectives. In doing so, we'll start by listing the various forms of budgeting. We'll then define strategic budgeting as a concept. We'll also list and explain some of the various principles of strategic budgeting. We'll then conclude by mentioning how governments can and should use strategic budgeting to achieve governmental goals. Without wasting any more time, let's get into today's video by first listing some of the various forms of budgeting and discussing each of these based on their own approach and benefits. Incremental budgeting relies on the previous period's budget as a baseline. Adjustments are made for factors like inflation, revenue variations, or changing priorities. Its straightforward nature makes it easy to implement, but it can also perpetuate past inefficiencies, since it largely assumes that historical allocations remain relevant. With zero-based budgeting, every budgeting cycle begins at zero, and with nil amounts. Every expense must be justified from the ground up, regardless of past spending patterns. This approach forces an in-depth review of each expense, identifying areas where costs can be trimmed or reallocated. While it can drive highly efficient resource use, it also demands significant time and rigorous analysis. Rolling budgeting, also known as continuous budgeting, involves regularly updating the budget by adding a new period, such as a month or a quarter, as the current period ends. This method maintains a constant planning cycle, which allows organizations to adapt quickly to changes in the market or internal circumstances, keeping the financial plan relevant throughout the year. Activity-based budgeting focuses on the costs associated with individual activities that underpin an organization's operations. By detailing each activity's cost drivers, managers can identify inefficiencies and target improvements. This approach helps in precisely aligning resources with the activities that add the most value, rather than simply following historical expenditure trends. Performance-based budgeting links funding to measurable outcomes and results. Instead of allocating funds solely based on historical data or incremental changes, this approach ties each allocation to key performance indicators and strategic targets. This approach therefore promotes accountability by ensuring that resources are directed toward programs that demonstrate tangible results, thereby aligning fiscal spending more closely with an organization's objectives. Value proposition budgeting goes beyond just tracking costs. It evaluates expenditures in terms of the value they deliver to stakeholders. Each budget item is scrutinized to assess its return on investment or value creation in qualitative and quantitative terms. This method is especially useful in environments where innovation, customer experience, or social impact is a priority, ensuring that every amount spent contributes measurable benefits. Strategic budgeting is the process of aligning an organization's financial planning and allocations with its long-term vision and strategic goals. Before we discuss strategic budgeting in more detail, please keep in mind that not every budgeting approach works universally. Organizations must assess their unique circumstances, goals, and operating environments to choose the best budgeting process that works for them. Ultimately, the decision on which budgeting process to adopt should be based on a thorough self-assessment and individual circumstances. Let's now discuss strategic budgeting in more detail. Strategic budgeting is the process of aligning an organization's financial resources with its long-term strategic goals. It involves setting long-term objectives, identifying key initiatives, developing financial projections, allocating resources, as well as monitoring progress. Essentially, strategic budgeting begins with setting clear objectives, identifying key priority areas, and then structuring the budget to support these initiatives. This method not only prioritizes long-term effectiveness and financial sustainability, but also incorporates flexibility. By regularly reviewing and adjusting the budget as conditions change, strategic budgeting ensures that funds are used to support the overall mission and can adapt to new challenges and opportunities. For a budgeting process to be strategic, it must represent and be based on some of the following principles. Let's now briefly discuss these principles. Firstly, and probably most important, the budget process must be in alignment with the strategic goals of the organization. This means that every financial decision taken must not only support the short-term goals, but also the long-term vision of the organization. Strategic budgeting process also considers the financial sustainability of the organization. This means that the budgeting strategy is not just about allocating funds for the short term. Instead, it involves planning for long-term financial health and stability, even when the economic landscape fluctuates. Strategic budgeting also looks beyond the current fiscal year. It develops multi-year financial plans that span several years, ensuring that the organization, or the government, can maintain its operations and commitments over time. This long-term approach also helps in anticipating future revenue changes and expenditure requirements. Strategic budgeting also considers future economic conditions such as inflation, recessions, or unexpected economic downturns, particularly because they can affect revenue streams and costs significantly. By considering these economic conditions, a strategic budgeting process incorporates various scenarios and builds buffers, such as contingency funds or reserves, as well as planning flexible spending mechanisms that can adjust during lean periods. This may also involve cutting discretionary spending or delaying non-essential projects in anticipation of tougher economic times. Strategic budgeting also ensures that debt levels remain sustainable, investments are sound, and that there is a clear plan in place to achieve objectives, even under adverse conditions. This approach supports continual service delivery and enables organizations to take advantage of long-term strategic opportunities. Strategic budgeting allows for flexibility and adaptability. This means that the budgeting framework is designed to adjust to changes quickly. The budget is regularly reviewed and updated to reflect new economic conditions, policy shifts, or unexpected events. Resources can be reallocated to priorities that emerge over time, ensuring ongoing alignment with long-term strategic goals. This allows organizations or governments to navigate uncertainties and maintain financial stability, despite fluctuations in the environment. This approach helps ensure that the long-term vision stays intact, even as circumstances change, and allows for budget adjustments as circumstances change, ensuring the budget remains relevant and effective. The strategic budgeting process also includes an element of performance measurement. This means using quantifiable metrics to track how effectively budget allocations are achieving their intended objectives. Essentially, strategic budgeting processes involve setting clear targets by establishing specific and measurable goals for each budget component, monitoring progress through the regular collection and analyzing of data to see if the allocations are producing the desired results. Should metrics indicate underperformance or changing priorities, funding decisions are modified to better align with strategic goals. This process ensures that financial resources are used efficiently and that the organization or government can adapt its strategies based on real outcomes. Strategic budgeting also requires an organization or the government to engage a diverse group of people and groups. This includes stakeholders such as internal team members, external partners, community representatives, and others, to contribute their insights and priorities. Ultimately, this ensures that the budget reflects a wide range of needs, builds consensus, and garners the necessary support for successful implementation. In the next section, we'll explore how governments can and should use strategic budgeting techniques to achieve governmental goals. But before we do that, we'd like to take a quick moment to ask for your support. If you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up by clicking that like button below. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our latest content. Remember, Hitting that subscribe button is free, and it shows us that you appreciate what we do. Now that you've subscribed, let's explore how governments can and should use strategic budgeting techniques to achieve governmental goals. As indicated, governments can harness strategic budgeting as a transformative tool to ensure that every amount spent contributes directly to long-term societal and economic goals. Governments can therefore use strategic budgeting to achieve their goals and fulfill their mandate by implementing the following strategies. Governments should integrate budget allocations with a clear strategic vision and specific policy priorities, ensuring every expenditure supports broad governmental objectives. Governments should also create medium-term frameworks that span several years, allowing for resource forecasting, capital investment planning, and continuity through economic ups and downs. Governments should further consider incorporating contingency funds and scheduled reviews to adjust spending in response to unexpected economic changes or emerging priorities. Governments should also establish clear, quantifiable metrics to monitor outcomes, assess the effectiveness of budget allocations, and make data-driven adjustments. Lastly, governments should involve diverse groups. This is to ensure the budget reflects a wide range of needs, builds consensus, and enhances transparency. By integrating these strategies, governments can use strategic budgeting not merely as an accounting exercise, but as a dynamic management tool that aligns fiscal resource allocation with strategic policy goals. We've come to the end of this video. So, thank you for watching. And if you found it insightful, you can also check out these other videos under our channel. Also remember to press the like button to show your support and subscribe to our channel for more content.